Absolutely. This is needed rain, but we still have to watch for at least some flash flooding, showing what you showed with that future radar. Some really heavy rain coming down tomorrow morning. So areas to watch for that potential of flash flooding Tuesday into Wednesday include really Corpus Christi and southward down to the U.S.-Mexico border, Interstate 2, Riviera, 77 as well. Torcon values, they're going to be around a 2, so not a 0 chance, but not a super high risk like these tropical systems. We saw it yesterday, had a tornado warning across south sections of California. We could see some rotating storms. So lightning, thunder, perhaps tornadoes, watching Corpus Christi up to Port O'Connor, Victoria, and then off towards the west, over towards the Laredo and the I-35 corridor. Got to watch those areas. Here's the future radar. You know, Dr. Postel showed that it is tomorrow morning where the real slug of that moisture begins to move in. 1 o'clock, you'll begin to see at least some rain, but the heaviest stuff advancing in just in time for that morning commute. So not the easiest drive to work for you in Corpus Christi, up I-37, I-69. E or C, and I-2 as well. Could see at times some heavier downpours. I do think the main slug of the moisture probably stays up closer to the Corpus Christi area. And then into Wednesday, you can see a lot of the rain is done. So this is not a long-lasting system. It's one of those in and out. That's some good news. Obviously, Texas, we've got a history of slow movers, so this one's not going to be one of those. San Antonio in that Torcon of 2, I-35, I-10, I-37. Places like Hondo also watching for an isolated tornado risk. Severe thunderstorm warnings also a possibility. Future radar for Austin, for San Antonio. I think things stay pretty dry during the overnight. It's tomorrow by the mid-morning hours. Areas south of San Antonio, we begin to see some of the heavier rain move in. And then tomorrow afternoon, I-35 and I-10, you're in the mix for some of those heavier downpours. Not a huge time frame, though, for some of the heaviest rain there. So passing showers. And again, these areas really need some rain. So this is some good news. And heck, you've been waiting for anything other than what, triple-digit heat, you'll take it. Houston area, let's take a quick look at you. Later tomorrow morning, we've got some of those showers working into the Galveston area. Heavy downpours at times, but Dr. Postel, they're pretty scattered in nature, so it's not going to be widespread rain here across these areas. So we're just out and about kind of being like, let's see what this was, you know, to say I went through it.
Exactly. No, exactly. And that was the case going in.
We're going to check in with Jen Carfagno there in Palm Springs in just a moment. Let's get you caught up, though, on Hilary and what is going to continue to happen with this storm. Post-tropical system now, and this is bringing rain all across sections of the west, including now the northwest. So now we've got Oregon and Idaho and Montana in the mix for some of that moderate and at times heavy rainfall. Location 115 miles to the west-northwest of Elko, Nevada. 35-mile-per-hour winds with this one. When we look at the rain over the last 24 hours, obviously the big winners were there into Southern California, the LA area, 3 to 5 inch totals, especially as we got up into the elevation. So that terrain helped us to squeeze out some higher totals north and also to the east of LA. Top rainfall reports, Mount San Jacinto, how about 11.74 inches, nearly a foot of rain coming down there. Raywood Flats also closing in on a foot of rain, almost 10 inches in Hart Bar, and then Ranchita picking up over 7 1/3 inches. Right now, we've got some of that rain also continuing across north central parts of California. And again, Vegas area, you've seen some rain showers persisting, and with some of those areas off to the west still getting rain, we've got a flash flood warning to tell you about. It is in Clark County, including the city of Mount Charleston. This is in effect until 12:30. Considerable threat. So the National Weather Service offices have been warning of the flash flood concerns, not just for like creeks and streams running high, but also some of those normally dry areas having fast moving water, rock slides, mudslides, all sorts of issues out there on the roads yesterday, and that continues today. In Mount Charleston, the Mount Charleston Fire Chief reported several washed out roads, heavy flows of water, and damage to the fire station due to the flooding. So again, that's why we've got that considerable threat on this. Staying off the roads, the best thing you can do for yourself. If you're in a safe spot, if you're in a dry spot, stay there. Down towards the LA area, we are quiet now, so much different than where we were yesterday. Hollywood had flooding near Melrose Avenue. Azusa had mud across all lanes of Highway 39. In San Fernando, we had 5 feet of mud across the I-5 corridor, and Azusa also had street and road flooding with road closures in the area. So, Dr. Postel, all sorts of trouble with this system. This one's moving out, and again, now our attention goes to what we've got in the Gulf Butte cyclone, Hilary as well. That one left behind half a year's worth of rain in just 6 hours in Palm Springs. That's where our meteorologist Jen Carfagno joins us from. She's got a look at conditions now. Jen, I know I was talking to you yesterday. The rain was coming down in buckets. What's it been like today?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's a beautiful.
Thanks so much. Want to switch gears, go from the southwest, which I think a lot of folks were surprised to see that we had a hurricane, then a tropical storm. Now we're back into the Gulf. Makes much more sense this time of year, much more expected. And I think tomorrow morning we're going to have a tropical storm in South Texas.
I think you're right. And that's going to bring a lot of heavy rain. And there is some chance that it gets even stronger than the initial forecasts have, which now suggests it's going to be a 45-mile-per-hour-ish tropical storm, bringing a lot of heavy rain. We know that. So just a heads up. These things can get stronger perhaps more quickly than initially thought, given the atmospheric and environmental conditions we've got around it.
Well, we were just talking about that in the break because we've got a lot working for potential strengthening. Anytime something's in the Gulf, you know that opportunity is there because the Gulf is notorious for that really warm water.
It is. And right now we're seeing a lot of thunderstorms that are kind of scattered around. They're sort of speckled here and there. And this is a good thing. You don't see like a continuous blob of red over here showing us. And that would tell us that maybe there's a concentrated area of thunderstorms right near the center. We're not really seeing that yet. That doesn't mean it can't happen, but it's already kind of getting close to the coast and moving quickly. So there's not that much time left. That's the limiting factor.
So time's just not on its side.
Time is not on its side.
You know, these areas need the rainfall. We'd obviously like to keep the winds in check. Hurricane hunters, they're out there taking a look at this. This is going to help us diagnose what could be likely to happen here in the next 12 to 16 hours.
You're right. And here they are right here showing you where their position is. They're going to be sort of circling in and around there, finding out exactly how strong the winds are and some of the other factors involved in the potential strengthening. But one of the things that I'm concerned about is the amount of fuel that this particular system will have, PTC-9, as it moves westward. It's not just that the waters are warm, it's just that warmth extends to a great depth. So there's a lot to work with here oceanically.
Yeah, so you get that upwelling happening as the storm moves over, but there's still more, there's more fuel to be added in. This, obviously, we've seen it happen before. I asked you in the break, what are the odds that we get a hurricane here?
They're probably small just because there's not enough time in the condition that it's in right now, but it is going to be over and moving through a very moist atmosphere. You can see the relative humidities are high all the way from the ocean surface to the very top. So there's not a lot of dry air. Dry air works against tropical development. We don't have that. And with all that in mind, given the favorable oceanic and atmospheric conditions, we're still not really expecting, as you asked, a hurricane. There's just not enough time. The guidance is consistently showing us 60 miles per hour or less.
Well, we know, and rightfully so. Folks in Texas go, I've seen this film before. Right? I know what happens. Is there any possibility? But in this case, we think that just the window is too short. With that said, heavy rain likely.
Heavy rain is likely, and nothing is ever for sure. So just tune back in and make sure this doesn't get out of hand. But we do expect a tropical storm moving inland to Texas tomorrow morning.
All right, much more coming up after this.
A lot of stuff to watch. And of course, some of the stuff that's most interesting is the one that's closest to home, and that is a potential tropical system in the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah, this is going to be bringing rain impacts. You are watching Weather Underground. I'm Alex Wilson here with Dr. Greg Postel. A lot to watch, but let's start with that potential tropical cyclone 9, because obviously in the short term, this one's going to be the most impactful. This an interesting system. Meteorologist Jen Carfagno, she's live on the ground in Palm Springs, California. Jen, big difference between yesterday and today. We had flooding, mudslides widely reported. Now you're standing in the sun, which is very much what we would expect in Palm Springs.
Well, exactly, all summer long now. But there's
potential tropical cyclone 9 moving over the Gulf of Mexico. This is one to watch. It's going to make landfall tomorrow into parts of Texas, bringing with it opportunities for heavy rain, some gusty winds as well. We got 30-mile-per-hour winds right now with this one, 480 miles to the east-southeast of Port Mansfield, Texas. Movement is west at 16 miles an hour, so it doesn't have a ton of time left here over the Gulf. With that said, the Gulf is warm. We've got that very, very high water temperature, and we've got a lot working for this. So this is expected to strengthen from a 30-mile-per-hour system right now to likely a tropical storm, something in that 40 to 55-mile-per-hour range. Could see higher. So hurricane hunters are out there. We're going to continue to update you on what they're finding. But there's the forecast track from the National Hurricane Center. And you're like, well, what is a potential tropical cyclone? Why do we have the cone, but we don't have a name? It's because we don't yet have the system. It hasn't formed, but it's going to form. So they want to be able to post those warnings and let people know about the impacts that are going to be happening here within the next day. Tuesday morning, 45-mile-per-hour winds. That is, again, the forecast from the National Hurricane Center. So that has prompted the tropical storm warnings and tropical storm watches. The watches in the yellow, the reds, those are indicative of the tropical storm warnings. Timing, again, it's going to happen sooner than later. We'll see the rain showers start during the overnight, but tomorrow morning will really bring the real slug of some of that heaviest and steadiest rain. Here's the good news. This thing's moving, so it's not going to be one of those systems that stays parked over the Gulf Coast and continues continues to just bring rain after rain after rain for days. This is going to be in and out. You can see by late Tuesday and into Wednesday, a lot of that rain has come to an end. Possibility of some severe weather with this system as well, all across South and Central Texas, really from Austin and San Antonio down towards the U.S.-Mexico border. Torcon's in that 2 range. Flash flooding will be something we watch for as well. Along I-35, south of Corpus Christi, and then down towards the Brownsville area. Again, Dr. Postel, these areas need the rain. Could be coming down heavily enough that we do see some flash flooding issues. Of these systems due in part to an exceptionally strong ridge of high pressure across the middle of the country. These numbers have been brutal, you guys. Excessive heat warnings in effect for over nearly 55 million people. Excessive heat watches for over 19 million people, and heat advisories in effect for almost or over 45 million people. So at total, nearly 120 million of us absolutely sweltering. Man, the middle of the country, awful. Not just hot, but humid as all heck, too. There's that heat dome. It's strengthening as we go through the day today. So yesterday we saw some of those crazy numbers, heat index values in the 120s, 130s. Absolutely awful. And another day expected where we could see potential record highs and record warm low temperatures, meaning that the temperatures just aren't cooling off at night, and instead they are staying on the warmest side they've ever been. By the way, we're looking at 2 of those cities, New Orleans and Des Moines, that are going to be dealing with some of that heat. Here's a look at the numbers. Temperatures into the triple digits from San Antonio and Austin. Again, those areas that are going to get rain tomorrow, all the way up into parts of Kansas and Nebraska. Lincoln topping out in the low hundreds. But what we got to pay attention to is the combination of the temperature and the dew point. That's your feels like temperature. So you look at the thermometer and you go, man, 103, that's terrible. But how about this? This is what it actually feels like outside Lincoln. 119, your forecast heat index, 116 in Tulsa, Wichita, nearly 110. Same for St. Louis. This is dangerous heat to be doing anything exerting outside. Honestly, standing outside is going to be rough on a day like today. So consider yourself, the kids, the pets, everybody needs to be inside in the air conditioning. Truly, this is one of those days where you cannot risk it. Scorching car scale, something we bring you here at the Weather Channel to remind you just how hot it gets inside a vehicle. And obviously on a 103-degree day in Oklahoma City, you know it's going to be a problem after just 10 minutes over 120 degrees inside that vehicle. But a place like Chicago, high of 81 today. So you're out walking around, you think it's not too bad. You're out going for a drive. You're like, you know what, I'm going to go into the store real quick and pick something up. I'll leave the dog in the car. 100 degrees after 10 minutes, and a lot of errands are taking at least 5 to 10 minutes. So way too hot. Just a reminder, leave pets at home, check the back seat before you leave the car, look before you lock. We say it all the time for everyone's safety. By the way, tomorrow, not much better. Still heat index values over 110. Hillary meteorologist Jen Carfagno live in Palm Springs, California. They received half a year's rain in just 6 hours on Sunday. Jen, we knew that was going to really be the calling card of Hillary. Some very unusual timing and amounts of rainfall.
Yeah, exactly. And so I want to go through some of the numbers.
That definitely helps. Jen, thanks so much. We're going to check back in with you. Let's talk a little bit more about the superlatives with Hillary. Jen mentioned some of those, the record rainfall that we expected to see, sure enough, translated. And of course, now we're watching what's happening in the Gulf. But here was Hillary as it made its way up the coast, moving through the L.A. area. Around this time yesterday, things really started to ramp up in terms of that rainfall intensity. Northern Baja California Peninsula is where this system made landfall as a tropical storm with 65-mile-per-hour winds. The rain, the wind was the calling card. We did have some issues with wind, but a lot of that was the water-induced flooding, and then things like landslides, rock slides, a lot of boulders over highways there across Southern California. 35-mile-per-hour winds right now with post-tropical cyclone Hillary moving to the north-northeast at 24 miles an hour. And you can see that moisture overspreading sections of eastern Oregon, parts of Idaho, and into the state of Montana. There were some of the highest rainfall amounts. A lot of these areas north and east of L.A. where we've got elevation in play. So as that air rises up those slopes, we really squeeze out that moisture. But nearly a foot of rain in a few locations. Dr. Postel. Now we look at the Atlantic. We know we are really into the heart of the season, and sure enough, the ocean's responded, or the activity has responded.
It totally has. And you look out there, it's really, really busy. Alex, thank you very much. Yeah, let's have a look. And I can sort of...
Overall, These areas have been dealing with drought and could use the rain, frankly. Potential tropical cyclone 9. This means that we expect this to become a tropical cyclone. It's not there yet, but the National Hurricane Center wishes to issue advisories on this. So the potential wording is used so that they can go ahead and do that. 35-mile-per-hour winds with this. It's 480 miles to the east-southeast of Port Mansfield there in Texas. This is heading west. It is going to make landfall, as Dr. Postel said, tomorrow morning, bringing with it some gusty winds, but more than anything, rain and the possibility of some thunderstorms. There's the forecast cone by this evening, 35-mile-per-hour storm. So expecting a depression, then a tropical storm with 45-mile-per-hour winds likely tomorrow morning. Of course, you never want to rule out, you never count out the Gulf for how warm the ocean temperatures are. And we'll talk a little bit more about that throughout the show. But obviously, there's not a ton of time left in the Gulf of Mexico here as this continues to move off towards the east. So that area to watch for the best risk of the more widespread heavier rain is going to be Corpus Christi down to about the Brownsville area. But even as high or as far north as a San Antonio or an Austin, we could see not just rain, but also the possibility of some stronger storms there. With these tropical systems, we always watch for severe storms and also tornadic storms. But we've got a new advisory in. We've got the hurricane hunters out as well. So, Dr. Postel, we're gathering more and more information on this.
Yeah, we are. And I want to forecast. The uncertainty is how strong will it get? Yeah. I don't think it's going to be a hurricane.
Right.
But it could be stronger than a 45-mile-per-hour tropical storm.
So winds could change, but we're still going to have the water, regardless of if this is depression or, again, we get a hurricane.
Indeed.
So flash flooding, something that we'll be watching for. The Weather Prediction Center highlighting some of these areas around I-35, Corpus Christi, and south, all the way to the U.S.-Mexico border. Those would be the areas that at least have the possibility of some localized flash flooding tomorrow. I don't think we're going to see widespread flash flooding. And, again, these areas have been pretty dry, so they'd like to get some of that wet weather. And this system is going to be moving. That's a key here, especially across Texas. We know we've got a history of some really slow movers. This isn't going to be one of them. Torcon values of 2, so not a 0. Obviously not a huge risk. You get some of those thunderstorms rolling in. Don't be surprised if your area does go under a tornado warning or a severe thunderstorm warning. With these tropical systems moving onshore, we get obviously a little bit more friction and we get some of these rotating storms. As Dr. Postel said, today, pretty quiet. It's tonight and really into tomorrow morning that we'll begin to see the rainfall amounts ramping up. Corpus Christi, areas along I-69, Highway 77, I-37, tomorrow's morning commute. Not going to be an easy one. Big time wet weather coming down. Heavier downpours mean the windshield wipers, they're working overtime, but at times they really can't keep up. So visibilities will be low out there. By early to mid-afternoon, you can see that rain's already headed over towards the place like Laredo, the I-35 corridor. And then we'll see rain become a lot more scattered in nature as we get into our Wednesday. By Wednesday morning, you can see it's actually pretty quiet across the area. So this is moving out. This is not going to stick around for days. Some good news once again with this. Torcon values in San Antonio, 2. Austin, you don't have that Torcon. We'll watch for an isolated thunderstorm that far north, but I do think it's San Antonio south that holds the best risk of anything that could be severe or especially rotating. Here's Tuesday morning. We've got some of that rain, especially on the south side of San Antonio for the morning drive. Early to mid-afternoon, that's when I think our best chance of seeing some heavier downpours around San Antonio and Austin would be, but they're going to be quick hitters. They're going to be passing. They are going to be moving, and so you get some of that welcome rain. Things keep going, so not as much of a flash flood risk up here under these sections of I-35. Houston, very similar story. We've got passing showers. They could be heavy downpours at times, but with the more scattered nature, the farther north you go, Dr. Postel, less of a widespread heavy rainfall risk that would pose a flood threat.
Well, flooding threat
considered. We had the flooding, but things seem to do their job. Jen, thanks so much. We're going to check back in with Jen. Let's take a peek at where this system is now, where it is headed next, and of course, knowing that we've also got all eyes on Texas. Things are happening and happening very quickly. But Hillary, a post-tropical system right now that is moving off to the north and west. So we've seen the rain across sections of, say, Oregon and Idaho and Montana today. You can see some of that moisture streaming off to the north. Again, this was post-tropical as of the 8 o'clock Pacific update, moving north-northeast at 24 miles an hour. As Dr. Postel said, that's that low that also helped to guide this. Remember, we've got that ridge, and then we had that low, and so this was able to just shoot the gap and move into Southern California, a more unusual movement pattern for something in the East Pac. Radar estimated rain over the last 24 hours. You can see the highest totals were close to really north and east of the Los Angeles area, where we do have terrain in play. So where we've got those areas of elevation, that wind moving upslope, we saw some higher totals. Some of these areas picking up near nearly a foot of rainfall by the time all was said and done. That includes Mount San Jacinto and Raywood Flats. Again, some of these communities off towards the north and especially east of Los Angeles. But all sorts of water coming down around LA. I know a lot of you were like, what is happening? We had that preseason game at SoFi Stadium. Folks were making their way out there, but up against some unusual weather for this time of year in SoCal. Right now, we've got that rain again, mostly confined to sections of Oregon and Idaho. We do have a flash flood warning there in Idaho, so we're not done with that risk. In fact, a flash flood warning continues here into parts of southern Nevada as well. Clark County, including the city of Mount Charleston, under the warning. Considerable threat on this. We've seen some problems in the area, including mudslides, rock slides. In Mount Charleston, the fire chief reported several washed out roads altogether, heavy flows of water, and then also damage to the fire station because of flooding. So we've even seen water getting into some of these structures in the area. So didn't make it out completely unscathed, obviously. We thought, or there was the possibility that things could be a lot worse than they were, but flooding, rock slides, a lot of boulders down onto roadways. Very Southern California, right? Mount Fernando had 5 feet of mud across the road. Hollywood, we had flooding near Melrose Avenue. In Azusa, mud all across Highway 39. And Azusa also had road and street flooding with vehicles stranded and roads closed. So again, not unscathed, Dr. Postel. The positive with this thing was it was also moving, but some big time rain across Southern California. Those islands have a history, and all the rain, as you mentioned, come into play. Well, coming up on the show, we've also got to watch South Texas, more on the developing threat there. You're under a tropical storm, now a post-tropical system. It left behind half a year's worth of rain in just 6 hours in Palm Springs. Our meteorologist Jen Carfagno has been there through the storm. Things much different today, but yesterday, Jen, when I was talking to you, that rain was coming down. Not at all what we think when we think of, those desert locations in Southern California.
Oh, exactly. But Alex,
Yeah, Jen, thanks so much. A lot of cleanup. We had a lot of mud across roadways. We had a lot of boulders, other debris across roadways. So as she mentioned, even though the weather has turned nicer, there's still some cleanup to be done.
Yeah, and there's more tropical activity, unfortunately, we have to get to.
Yes.
But before that, you can see some of these rainfall totals from Hillary.
Yeah.
They were really off the charts, unprecedented in many ways in California.
Some of these areas approaching a foot. I mean, we were seeing a significant percentage of our annual rainfall in one day. So
that was the thing. It was the rainfall rates that were so significant.
Yeah.
And also, of course, how much we ended up getting storm total.
Yeah, this is usually the dry season, so a tropical system is going to really throw that off. Now we head back to the Atlantic, where they are lined up. They are coming at us, it feels like, from every direction. This one in the Gulf, and obviously a lot of people who are Weather Channel savvy viewers, they go, ooh, I don't like to see anything in the Gulf knowing how warm it is.
No, we don't, because there are factors that suggest that potential tropical cyclone 9 will become a lot stronger and a tropical storm when it makes landfall tomorrow morning. Here's the cone from the National Hurricane Center. So if you live anywhere from Brownsville through Corpus, even all the way up to Houston, just pay very close attention to this. It is going to strengthen, very likely to be a tropical storm in a matter of hours, if it isn't already, and bring heavy rainfall inland to Texas.
Yeah, we're going to get you a lot more updates on this. Of course, we've got the hurricane hunters out there. Our expert analysis continues throughout the day, and we're going to be tracking this overnight. We got ground crews. They're on their way, too, to Texas. We'll be right back. Expert Dr. Greg Postel. We've got a lot to watch. Obviously, most imminent is potential tropical cyclone 9.
Right. It is sort of in a flurry of tropical activity that kind of flared up just over the last few days. We figured that was going to happen, and right on cue, we've got a whole lot to talk about, but you're right. Potential tropical cyclone 9 in the Gulf of Mexico is item number 1.
Right, and it's in a very warm Gulf of Mexico. You've pointed out there are other things that are going to work for this, so it is going to strengthen as it makes its way closer to Texas.
And we have to watch this thing.
All that with Hillary yesterday making landfall as a tropical storm across sections of Southern California, bringing with it a lot of very heavy rain. Weather Channel's Reynolds Wolf, he is in Palm Springs. So Reynolds, you've made your way over to the Palm Springs area. I know you've been traveling all around Southern California. Sunshine's out, but what are things like in terms of travel? We may have said goodbye to Hillary, but we still have so much to watch, including potential tropical cyclone 9. This is the most imminent threat to the U.S., and in fact, it will make landfall tomorrow morning, likely as a tropical storm into parts of Texas. Right now, it is the 35-mile-per-hour system. We don't have a tropical cyclone yet, so what we've got, potential tropical cyclone. And you're like, Well, what does that mean? That just allows the National Hurricane Center to issue watches and warnings, so issue advisories before the system really exists, before we have that system, with the anticipation that we will get the system. So it's moving west 16 miles an hour. There's the forecast track as it makes its way towards Port Mansfield, Brownsville, Corpus Christi, Laredo. These are all areas that are going to be getting in on rain out of this, probably some gusty winds, and the possibility of severe weather, including tornadoes. Torcon values aren't overly high, but they're not zero either. Here are a look at our warnings and watches. Tropical storm watch for the areas in yellow, but the warnings are posted for places like Fulton and Corpus Christi down to Port Mansfield and Brownsville. By the way, we've got crews on the way, or actually on the ground. We're going to be checking in with them here in the short term and longer range into tomorrow as they bring you the very latest on what's happening into Texas. Areas that really need rain, honestly. We've been talking about nothing but heat and dry and drought across parts of Texas this season. So this is going to bring some welcome rain. And the piece of good news that continues with this system is it's one that moves. So we don't have a system that makes its way onto the coast and then just sits and rains itself out for days. This is going to be a quick hitter moving in generally during the day tomorrow with that heavy rain potential working through. So you're going to get a quick soaking of rain. But again, it's not going to be something that lasts days. Tomorrow, there's the severe risk, Del Rio, San Antonio, even closing in on the Austin area, Victoria, Port O'Connor, down to areas north of Brownsville. And again, Torcon values of 2. Flash flood risk is there, even though this is welcome and needed rain. South Texas, the areas to watch for that, Dr. Postel.
Yeah, now let's talk about the remnants of...
Due to the gigantic and enormous ridge that we've got across the middle of the country. 119 plus million people under some kind of heat advisory, including over 54 million people under excessive heat warnings, nearly 55 million people. It has been absolutely brutal out there. Heat index values or feels like temperatures 120, even 130 plus degrees. And that heat's going to continue, unfortunately. So we're not going to see that relief with this really, really notable and very strong area of high pressure. So we give you a look at some of the cities that are getting in on some of that heat, including Des Moines and New Orleans. So it's not just the Gulf Coast, but all the way up into the Corn Belt, into parts of the Plains. Gosh, what was it? Lawrence, Kansas, yesterday dealing with a heat index of 134. No, thank you. That means dew points were in the mid-80s. Absolutely abysmal. Heat dome firmly in place today, tomorrow, into our Wednesday. So the heat, that's going to be the story for a lot of folks, including the middle of the country. You're not getting any relief from this. In fact, those temps will remain in the triple digits. And then when you add in the humidity, it's going to feel a whole lot worse than that. So late week, we've got temperatures around 101 Oklahoma City, 107 in Dallas. We've got 106 for Houston, 107 in Jackson, Mississippi. So the southeast, south central states into the central plains are going to be some of the worst spots. But again, portions of the plains, portions of the Midwest also getting in on that heat. And through Friday, each and every one of these dots where we could see record highs set. So as far north as Minnesota and Wisconsin, portions of Michigan as well. Today, highs not so bad up in Minneapolis and Chicago. We got 80s there for those cities, but plenty of triple digits, including places like Dallas and Wichita and even Lincoln getting up to the 102 range. But we can't pay attention to the temperature. We have to look at what the combo is, right? The temperature interspersed or intermixed with the humidity values, the dew points. There's your feels like temperature over 110 in Lincoln. How about closer to 120? Tulsa, Oklahoma, you're knocking on the door of 120, 113 in St. Louis. This is dangerous heat to be outside. So you're not just exerting activity like jogging. You don't want to do anything outside. And of course, got to remember those vehicles, even in places like Chicago with a high of 81, dangerous in just Southern California. Our meteorologist Reynolds Wolf, he is live in Palm Springs, California. Reynolds, you pointed out that half a year's rain that you got in just 6 hours on Sunday did really make a mess of the road. So even though the sun shines back out, it is not an easy go in terms of travel.
You're right about that. I mean, what's going on?
Continues on the Weather Channel. By the way, storm center depression or a tropical storm just to mix things up. This is going to do just that. It's going to bring some needed rainfall. Now, it's not to say that it won't come without some problems. We'll watch for the possibility of flash flooding and some gustier winds as well as severe weather. But all things considered, running out of time for this to strengthen. 35-mile-per-hour winds right now. Potential tropical cyclone means it's not there yet, so we don't have a depression or a storm, but the National Hurricane Center anticipates it and needs to issue advisories on it because we are within that window. So we've got that potential tropical cyclone usage so that we can get those watches and warnings posted. There's the forecast track. By Tuesday morning, we got 45-mile-per-hour winds. Not to say that's in stone. We could see this strengthen given the very warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico. Of course, always something we watch. Anything that gets into the Gulf, can't totally trust it. But again, not expecting a hurricane, expecting a tropical storm, expecting mostly a rainmaker. But Dr. Postel, there's still a lot we have to watch here in the next, 12 to 16 hours.
Yeah, we do. There is some atmosphere that could cool us down and bring us some needed rain. There's a silver lining here. I
mean, I think people were willing to pay for some clouds, some rain showers, given what they've had. Now, we will have that possibility of some flash flooding at least, not dealing with the, extreme risk like what we had yesterday across Southern California. But the Weather Prediction Center does say at least the possibility of some flash flooding across South Texas. Torcon values not overly high, but we've got Torcon values of 2 from Victoria and Port O'Connor to Corpus Christi over towards Laredo as well. So severe weather, that's going to be one of the risks. Flash flooding, that's going to be one of the risks. But I think overall, when we talk about this system, it's going to be more beneficial rain than anything that we see. As we go through this afternoon, we're staying generally dry. Yeah, maybe a hit or miss shower or thunderstorm there, but the real moisture from this system doesn't arrive until the overnight hours. So here's tomorrow morning, 1 o'clock. We begin to see some of that light to moderate rain advance into Corpus Christi. I think the heaviest stuff right in time for the morning drive. So it is going to be a slow go if you are out on the roads, including I-37, 69, I-2, I-35 by lunchtime. I think that's when you see the real significant slug of moisture make it into your area. And it moves out. So it's going to be a few hours of heavy rain. This system, though, zips off to the east. So this is not going to be one of those systems that sits over parts of the state and just brings inches and inches and inches of rain, causing a lot more problems than benefits. I think this one will be more beneficial than not. Tomorrow, there's the San Antonio Torcon 2 there, so an isolated tornado risk will be what you're watching for. San Antonio, you're a spot by mid-morning. I think that's your best chance of seeing some of the rain. Higher chances to the south. Now, for a place like San Antonio and Austin, probably late morning through the early to mid-afternoon, and it will be a little bit more scattered in nature. So I think, some passing heavier downpours, but not necessarily steady heavy rain for hours. Houston, a very similar forecast there. So farther to the south, that's where we'll see, maybe a few hours of heavy rain. But for a place like Houston, passing scattered showers and storms tomorrow afternoon. Downpours possible in there, but you can see not everybody gets them. Not everybody gets them at all times. Some areas will stay dry, much more hit and miss in nature. As we make our way closer to late tomorrow, early Wednesday, we're done with the wet weather courtesy of this system. So, some benefits there. We will, again, be watching for at least localized flash flooding, at least out of this one. Dr. Postel, we got so much more to watch also through the Atlantic. Tropical system making landfall in the month of August that we'd be tracking would be one in Southern California. It was not my expectation, nor was it a lot of Californians, but that's what we've got. Reynolds, thanks so much. We'll check back in with you. As Reynolds mentioned, a historic storm, really, this system bringing some huge rainfall rates. Still plenty of problems in terms of travel. Right now, we've got a post-tropical cyclone. So as of 8 o'clock this morning, this system is post-tropical, still bringing moisture to sections of Oregon and Idaho, also the state of Montana. So that is moving up and over the ridge. And the good news was it was moving quickly, and it continues to do just that. There are the rainfall totals. Some of these areas across California picking up almost a foot of rainfall. And for a lot of these communities, a substantial amount of your yearly rainfall falling in just a few hours within yesterday. You can see a place like Mount Laguna, over a half foot there. So around and especially east of the LA area, especially where we had terrain, that helps to enhance that rainfall. You get that real tropical air rising up the slopes, wring out all that moisture, and that's exactly what we saw. And unfortunately, a lot of mudslides, even rock slides across those roadways. Right now, I mentioned we do have a few flash flood warnings, one into South Nevada, one into the state of Idaho. So the rain is still causing at least some localized problems. A closer look at this one. We've got Clark County here under the flash flood warning, including Mount Charleston. This is in effect until 12:30. Considerable threat on this, as we have had problems in Mount Charleston due to the flooding. The fire chief there reported several washed out roads, heavy flows of water, and also some damage to the fire station because of that flooding. So we've even seen water into structures, but a lot of this has been road impacts, whether the roads are washed out, covered in mud, or debris has come down onto those roadways. Right now, we've got some of those steadier rain showers moving out of Arizona into the state of Utah as well. That's where the risk of strong thunderstorms will be today. So from the Arizona-Mexico state line all the way up into Montana, we could see some of these storms getting a little bit feisty. Areas around and east of Salt Lake City included. Winds right now gusting to 37 miles an hour in Pocatello, 45 miles an hour in Elko, 35 miles an hour in Salt Lake City. So still some activity, and the high wind warnings and the wind advisories continue through tomorrow. Dr. Postel?
Well, you know, Alex,
They're susceptible to landslides and mudslides. Well, coming up on the show, more on that Springs, California. Reynolds, I know you said travel has been a real problem. Jen, we were talking to her a little bit earlier. She said overall things fared well, but I think people get that sense that the sun shines out and everything's solved. Not the case.
Oh, you're right about that. I mean, there's some different
with Reynolds Wolf in just a minute. But of course, Dr. Postel, we got to talk about kind of what's next on the docket. As we leave Hillary, literally the next day we pick up on PTC 9.
That is a developing tropical cyclone in the Gulf of Mexico, likely to make landfall tomorrow morning as a tropical storm somewhere between Brownsville and Corpus Christi. And we think significant rain and some gusty winds coming on board as early as later on tonight.
Yeah, so we've got all conditions are conducive for development. We know anytime something gets out into the Gulf, we got really warm waters to work with. Is there anything that you're worried about here in the short term? I know all the guidance and the suggestion would be that we've got a tropical storm. Is there anything that could happen here in the short term?
No, I don't think so. I think what we're going to be dealing with is a gradual organization of the thunderstorms. You're going to see them concentrate themselves near the center of circulation over the next several hours and overnight tonight as it moves westward. The atmosphere, as you mentioned, is ripe for allowing it to strengthen. The ocean underneath it is warm and ripe for intensification. A lot of factors working in its favor, except one, and perhaps the most important one. Not enough time.
Yeah.
There's not enough time because it'll be on board likely tomorrow morning.
Don't we all feel like that sometimes? Not enough time. In this case, it's actually going to work for us, though, right? Because we're going to get the welcome rain out of this, but we're not going to be dealing with a stronger system.
That's right. The window is closing. The amount of time it's got over water is another 12 to 18 hours. That's just not enough, I don't think. But it still could easily get to tropical storm strength. We're going to see some heavy rains and some gusty winds move onshore later on this evening and overnight tonight along the Texas Gulf Coast.
Good news is it's also a quick hitter. So we're not dealing with something like, past and historic tropical cyclones there across Texas that sit and just rain themselves out. This one's going to move.
It's going to move. And if it were moving more slowly, let's say, over water that's this warm with that much heat content right here, these areas shaded in red are very high octane fuel from the Gulf of Mexico. We know, we've talked about how warm the Gulf of Mexico has been. This is moving over those warm waters in a very moist atmosphere. Good thing is there's not enough time for it to get much stronger than a tropical storm.
Dare I say, do we thank that ridge for and post-tropical Emily? You are watching Weather Underground. I'm Alex Wilson here with our expert, Dr. Greg Postel.
You know, the Atlantic tropical activity has come alive.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. In a big way.
In a huge way. All of a sudden, we have an outbreak of tropical cyclones. We kind of thought that, it would wake up, and it certainly did over the last few days. All of a sudden, it has erupted with all kinds of stuff out there. But we do have a system to watch that's going to be impacting us close to home. Yeah. Or in the next 12 to 18 hours.
And a lot of interesting stuff to watch with this, because obviously anytime we get a system in the Gulf, we want to keep eyes on it. But as you pointed out, time, we usually say time is not on our side. In this case, time actually may be on our side to keep this generally a positive system. That's
an excellent point. There's not enough time, I don't think, for the system in the Gulf of Mexico to get a whole lot stronger than it is right now. There's some
roads obviously dealing with those bad conditions.
Yep.
I know it's been frustrating. I know you've been trying to make your way to Palm Springs, but it's just like a lot of roadblocks, to say the least.
Yeah, nothing is easy on a day like today other than maybe flying. Flying, the skies are fantastic. It's, however, what the skies brought.
Potential tropical cyclone 9 in the Gulf of Mexico. If you're just tuning in, we got something to watch in the Gulf as well as plenty in the Atlantic. We're going to break all that down for you. 35-mile-per-hour winds with this one moving west at 16 miles an hour. It's 480 miles to the east-southeast of Port Mansfield. So this is going to continue to move off towards the west. We do have tropical storm warnings and watches posted across sections of South Texas. Expecting a 45-mile-per-hour tropical storm by tomorrow morning. This is going to offer up rain, Some gusty winds and also the potential for a few isolated severe storms or tornadoes. Fulton, Corpus Christi, Port Mansfield, areas north and east of Brownsville under those tropical storm warnings. So even though we don't have the system yet, we've got the warnings in anticipation that we're going to be dealing with a depression, then storm as it moves its way off towards the east. Here's a look at the future radar. I think anything we see today in terms of rain is going to be fairly scattered in nature, but the rain moves in overnight, especially by mid to late morning tomorrow into the early afternoon. That's when we'll see the most significant rain, but this system is moving, so not a huge flooding threat. Dr. Knapp? Or Dr. Postel, I'm sorry, I did it again. Well, hurricane season in full swing, and those in hurricane-prone areas know how important it is to be prepared before, during, and after a storm. Reynolds 12 talks with one lifelong Florida resident who decided to install a standby generator just in the nick of time. Have it, good stuff. And, we've been talking a lot about that ridge and the favors that it's doing for us in terms of tropical guidance and motion. Not doing you any favors if you're finding yourself underneath that. That heat dome firmly in place, keeping temps in the triple digits. It is humid underneath that. So the feels like temperatures, those heat index values, 120, 130 plus. This week, we'll continue to deal with it. So there's the late week temperatures, still triple digits as far north as Davenport, Iowa. When we factor in the humidity, though, it's going to feel a lot worse. And records will be falling. Each and every one of these red dots, a place where we could see a record high through the week. Again, those areas farther into the middle of the country, heat indices 120, 130 plus. Dr. Postel.
Central California.
The name of the game yesterday. Gosh, we had Hillary make its way into parts of Southern California, other parts of the West, bringing with it a ton of rainfall. Meteorologist Reynolds Wolf was there monitoring it. And now in the aftermath, the sun is out, but all of our problems, Reynolds, they're not solved.
Oh, you're so right about that. I mean, it's one of those days.
Dr. Postel, a lot more to come here, and our coverage continues next on the weather. Get any problems, right? I'm not going to say there's not going to be some gusty winds. There won't be some severe weather. There won't even be some localized flash flooding. But for the most part, this is a quick hitter. It's in, it's out. It's going to offer up some needed rainfall across the area. And for the most part, I think it's going to be welcome and manageable rain as opposed to flood-inducing rain. 35-mile-per-hour winds right now with this one. It is 480 miles to the east-southeast of Port Mansfield, Texas, moving west 16 miles an hour. So what Dr. Postel has been saying is time is on our side, not necessarily its side. It's going to run out of time to strengthen, likely becoming a tropical storm by tomorrow morning. That's when it would make landfall, and that's when most of the rain effects will be felt tomorrow, mid to late morning through the afternoon hours. Forecast cone, again, has this moving off towards the West Texas, Mexico border as we make our way into the late evening. So one benefit of that dominant ridge of high pressure is it's keeping these systems moving. It kept Hillary moving. It's keeping PTC 9 moving, likely to become, by the way, Dr. Postel, Tropical Storm Harold.
That is right. And, that track.
I love it. I love being called right.
You're right a lot.
Right? Well, thanks.
Except when you call me Dr. Knapp.
Exactly. Well, I have been wrong. I have been wrong twice. I will fully admit that. But
just twice. That's it.
We still have an hour to go, so give it time. Maybe do I go for a three-peat? But ultimately, I do think that this is overall going to be, tipping the scales more on the beneficial side.
Let's hope that's the case. Yeah.
Let's hope. Time not always on our side in the Gulf of Mexico, but I think this time it may just be. Tomorrow, Torcon values of 2. So again, we talk about generally beneficial, not without risks. We will see some severe weather tomorrow. Torcon of 2 would indicate at least an isolated tornado risk along I-37, I-35. So here into south central sections of Texas. Future radar telling the story this afternoon. I think we've got scattered showers and thunderstorms, but the real brunt or bulk of the moisture, courtesy of this system, starts to arrive overnight and mid to late morning tomorrow. That's when the real slug of moisture comes in. So here's 7 o'clock, your morning drive, I-37, 77, 69. These are areas that are going to be getting in on heavy downpours. You see plenty of the orange and the red. That's the tropical rainfall. But notice it's moving, so we don't have that sitting over these areas for hours. Instead, we've got progressive heavy showers. So I think we get a really quick soaking, but the showers continue to move from east to west. So that would mean that we get the ground saturated, and it's not too much to handle where we're dealing with just so much runoff. Keep in mind, it's very dry there, so we will have at least some runoff, especially areas that get repeated rounds of heavy rain. But I think with the progressive motion, we don't have a ton of runoff. Here's 7 o'clock tomorrow night. At that point, things are pretty scattered, so we see a lot more dry time, so truly giving you a sense of what a quick hitter this system is. Here's the risk of flash flooding as we look towards Tuesday into Wednesday. So we've got possible flash flooding for Laredo, Corpus Christi, and southward. I think we'll see at least some localized, but it's not going to be widespread. I don't think we're looking at, community or south or regional wide flooding, regionally wide flooding. Here's tomorrow's Torcon for San Antonio. Again, 2 out of 10. Less of a risk in Austin. I don't think we're going to see much in terms of severe weather there. And for San Antonio even, it's not going to be, consistent or persistent rainfall. It's going to be more in the way of scattered rain and thunderstorms, particularly late morning through the afternoon hours. You can see some pockets of heavier downpours in there, but not everybody getting wet at all times. So the steadiest and heaviest rain focused farther to the south, whereas areas to the north like San Antonio, Dr. Postella, Houston, those are areas that'll see much more in the way of scattered summertime showers and storms.
And Alex, speaking of very heavy rain.
Too, Reynolds. Yes, I can always count on both of you,
Oh, how
right?
could I not? Yes. Yes.
Well, there's nothing better than being told that you are correct, right? We love to hear it.
Very true, yes.
Thank you, Reynolds. Appreciate you. All right, we're going to get back out to Reynolds. Let's take a peek at what is left with Hillary. And, of course, that trough, that area of low pressure that helped to guide Hillary. So we have high pressure over here. We had the low here. That gave us that escape route for that system, that unusual movement. A lot of people going, they don't usually move that way. And you're right. You're right. We don't usually have that. But the atmospheric setup was one that did allow for this to happen. Right now, we've got a severe thunderstorm warning and a tornado warning here into central California. So we've got San Francisco well off to the north and west. It's Merced County under the tornado warning. This has been moving off to the north around 20 miles an hour. Pretty rural area here in Merced County, but we're likely getting in on some big hail out of this one. So we've got that cold pocket aloft with that area of low pressure. That's going to promote the hail development or at least some very heavy rain, but I think we're probably seeing some hail. 115, the expiration on that. And again, that possible tornado would be sitting right in there along I-5. So area of rotation, very close to the south side of I-5. This is going to continue up to the north, again, around 20 miles an hour. Another area of rotation closer to that hail core. Fresno County under a severe thunderstorm warning. The worst of the storm now on the north side of I-5. Could be getting some hail out of this one as well. Again, with that low aloft, we've got some of that cooler air aloft. Flash flood warning down into areas outside of Vegas. It is Mount Charleston, the city in Clark County under the warning. We've got Mount Charleston dealing with problems because of the flooding. We have washed out roads. We've got heavy flows of water, and we've also got some damage to the fire station because of flooding. So we've seen water into structures, but we've seen a lot of water over roadways. We've seen a lot of water bringing things onto roadways that aren't usually there, whether it's mud, whether it's boulders, and it's making a lot of those roads, as Reynolds has told us, impassable. Also, a stream of moisture coming out of Arizona into parts of Utah, even eastern sections of Idaho. That's where we are going to be watching for the possibility of some severe weather today. Post-tropical Hillary, a lot of this moisture up to the north is associated with that. So we've also got our low, some of the highest totals approaching a foot there outside of L.A. as we got into the higher elevations to the north and east of the city. That obviously terrain helped to really enhance the rainfall totals. But even outside of that, Dr. Postell, there were plenty of areas that saw a half a foot or more.
Yeah, a half a foot or more of rain in southern.
On the show, Postell has more on the developing threat to South Texas. Palm Springs, Reynolds, I know you said it's kind of like hair pulling to drive around the area today, whether it's boulders on the road or mud washed over the road. So the rain really did do a number on a lot of the transportation aspects here in the state.
Oh, that's absolutely true. What's interesting about it, too, is you can have some heavy.
You said pretty much that's the only way that's, at least not frustration inducing is to do that.
Yes.
All right.
Oh, very much
Reynolds,
so.
by the way,
we did our own traveling this morning.
Oh,
Yes.
you did? Okay. Yeah. So, and then you're traveling with the GPS and it's telling you where to go and you're like, I can't do that. We were talking about the benefits of this system, keeping it moving. Dr. Postell, we wanted to know, would you rather be in Kansas right now where the heat index is 135?
Wow. Oh, my goodness. No, I'd rather be right here. That is just, that's punishment. That's where it's not weather anymore. It's punishment.
No, that's awful. Reynolds. Thank you. It's been doing that. That ridge has been doing us favors. It kept Hillary moving. It's keeping PTC 9 moving, but underneath it,
Underneath it, the heat index last hour in Lawrence, Kansas, as Alex mentioned, was 135 degrees. The temperature was 103. The dew point is 84. I don't recall seeing numbers like that. But you're right. It's associated with the giant record-breaking heat wave of historic proportions over the middle of the country. But it's doing us, in some cases, a favor by moving things along. The development potential in the Gulf won't have that much time, in part because it's moving so fast, being steered around that heat wave over the middle of the U.S.
Yeah, that ridge is keeping things moving clockwise. So on the south side of this thing's shuffling along farther to the north. Everybody's suffering for it.
That's right. Unfortunately, we all have some role in all of this. And the good news here with, I think, this particular system, as you mentioned, it is moving very quickly. Right now, we're not seeing signs of a lot of immediate development, but during the next 12 hours, there's a chance the atmosphere and the ocean have a window of opportunity open a little bit. But again, not much of a window, because look at how quickly it's going to be inland, very likely tomorrow morning in Texas.
Yeah, we never count the Gulf out just because it is so warm and conditions always so favorable, but time is certainly on our side this time as opposed to in previous storms.
Right, and I do think that there'll be heavy rain and some gusty winds as it comes on board, and that's not all a bad thing, as you were mentioning. You were right, Alex, that we're going to see some heavy rain, and we could use it in the drought-stricken areas in southern Texas.
I mean, South Texas, one of those areas, just like Kansas and Oklahoma, we've been talking about what? Heat, humidity, drought. So this is welcome rain to these areas.
You're right about that.
All right. I love it. Thanks, Dr. Postel. Hey, we got much more coming up after this. We look at that, and no question, it is late August, headed towards the month of September.
And it looks like late August, heading into September, right? As sometimes the tropics waken and all of a sudden present a flurry of activity, which is exactly what we have now. Not snow flurries, I mean, but a cluster of potential development.
Boy, wouldn't we love some snow flurries in parts of the country right now.
Oh, my goodness gracious. You and I were talking about that.
Pay for winter.
It's unbelievable. Heat indices in parts of Kansas are over 130 degrees right now as we speak. And that plays a role in the tropical development and the things we see in the tropics now.
Well, so much you always talk about how things are connected. Everything is connected, and sure enough, that ridge has done us some good, both with Hillary and the current system that we're watching.
So what we're talking about...
Palm Springs, Reynolds Wolf is there. Reynolds, you've got a lot of frustration for travelers today. You've been warning folks. Air is the method of choice. The GPS systems that we love, we live by right now, they may not be usable on a day like today because there's still a lot of debris or mud over roadways courtesy of yesterday's system.
Yes, we've relied...
All right, potential tropical cyclone 9 dominating our attention today, right? We go from Hillary in the East Pac, parts of Southern California, now to a system with a beeline, or making a beeline to Texas. It's South Texas that are going to get in on the rain showers, possibility of severe weather, and some gusty winds courtesy of this system that will likely become Tropical Storm Harold as it makes its way off to the east. 35-mile-per-hour winds with this one right now, moving west at 16 miles an hour. But the forecast from the National Hurricane Center is the expectation for a tropical storm tomorrow morning with 45-mile-per-hour winds, making landfall around Port Mansfield, Corpus Christi area, offering up some very welcome rain. The good piece of information with this system, Tuesday morning here, Tuesday evening here. So it's moving. This is not a system that's going to stall out or curl up and continue to bring rain to the same areas. This is going to be a system that moves, offering up some welcome rain. While it will be heavy, could lead to at least some localized flash flooding. I think for most areas, it's just going to be good news rain in these communities. Tropical storm warnings posted for the areas in red. That includes Corpus Christi, Texas, down towards communities outside of Brownsville, Port Mansfield as well. And then we've got the tropical storm watch farther to the north, areas shaded in yellow. Future radar shows today it's scattered rain showers and thunderstorms we watch for. Overnight, that's when some of the steadier, heavier rain begins to move in, and that'll continue during the day tomorrow. But again, moving off to the east. So areas that get in on those heavy tropical downpours, it's not going to be a long-lasting event. A few hours, and then we see things move out or at least become a little bit more scattered through the second half of tomorrow. You can see by tomorrow evening into the overnight hours, very little in the way of wet weather left across Texas. Severe thunderstorm possibility there. We've got torcons around 2. And again, the risk of a severe thunderstorm from areas probably just south of Austin, Dr. Postel, down to areas south of Corpus Christi.
Yeah, with landfalling tropical cyclones.
Meanwhile, off to the east, we've got that big dominant ridge of high pressure, and that has left things hot, to say the least. Over 54, nearly 55 million people under excessive heat warnings. In total, heat advisories, excessive heat watches, and excessive heat warnings, we've got nearly 120 million people under those. And the numbers, They are staggering. Dr. Postel and I have been telling you about some of these heat indices. Lawrence, Kansas right now, a heat index, that's that combo of heat and dew point, 135. You can't function. You just, like, my brain can't fathom those numbers. Heat dome, that's the responsible party. Again, it's been doing us some favors in terms of keeping our tropical systems moving. If you live underneath it, it is doing you no favors. It is absolutely miserable, dangerous heat that we're up against. And that lingers all week with temperatures in the triple digits on tap all the way through the second half of our week across sections of the southern, central, northern plains, parts of the Midwest as well. Also sections of the southeast getting in on the warmth. Mid-Atlantic, you guys could see some high temperatures that reach record territory as well. Each and every one of these red dots is a place where we could see a record high temperature fall through the end of the week. So the heat is very expansive through a lot of the country. But again, the real core of it, where you see that light pink color, that's where high temperatures are in the triple digits. But dew points, they're not doing us any favors. 70s, even 80s for the dew points. It's rough. Look at the heat index values today. 121 in Tulsa, 117 in Lincoln. Again, parts of eastern Kansas. We've got dew points, or rather heat index values in excess of 130. That is rough. 112 in Dallas, 103 in Nashville, approaching triple digits in Atlanta, Georgia. So the scorching car scale, a reminder of how hot, how dangerous it gets inside a vehicle just within a few minutes. Oklahoma City, obviously a 104 high. It's going to be dangerous even without, warming things up. But look at Chicago, a high temperature of 81 today after just 10 minutes inside that vehicle, 100 degrees, 115 after 30 minutes. So important to look before you lock. Leave the pets at home if you're going to be making any stops. Heat indices tomorrow, over 110 in plenty of spots again. National Hurricane Center has designated our potential tropical cyclone now a tropical depression. So TD9, what we're dealing with right now, with winds of 35 miles an hour, pressure at 1,008 millibars. It is moving to the west 18 miles an hour, headed right to the south central part of the state of Texas. So really South Texas. These are areas that will see landfall of likely a tropical storm by tomorrow morning. That'll bring with it the opportunities for heavy rain, some severe weather, and of course, some gusty winds that will accompany this system. Here's the forecast cone. Again, this is now newly updated from the National Hurricane Center. By early tomorrow morning, anticipating Tropical Storm Harold. That will make landfall probably late morning, midday here across South Texas. Again, bringing with it opportunities for a quick hit of some heavy rain, possibility of severe weather, and those gusty winds in that 40 to 50 mile per hour range. But early or late Tuesday into early Wednesday, zipping off to the west, passing over Texas and moving through parts of Mexico. Tropical Depression 9, we still have those warnings posted from areas around Brownsville up towards areas south of Victoria. Anywhere in red, that's the warning. The watch is in yellow. And again, the risk is there for not just heavy rain, but also severe weather. When we look at the forecast or the future radar, you can see some of the heaviest rain begins to move in by early to mid-morning tomorrow. That will continue through the at least early to mid-afternoon. You can see zipping off to the west. Watch for an isolated tornado potential, but I think the name of the game is going to be the moderate to heavy rain. Dr. Postel, it is good news. These communities need rain. We have been talking about what a hot and dry summer it's been. So this may actually bring more welcome weather than unwelcome.
You're right, Alex. That's a
Dr. Postel, thanks so much. Well, coming up, our coverage continues here on the Weather Channel. We've got Storm Center.